Hey everybody, I'm Bryan Falchuk, best-selling author, public speaker, and life and executive coach, and I'm joining Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty podcast today to talk to you about my work with my book, Do a Day, and this transformational idea that starts with, this is going to hurt a little bit, how you're shaming yourself. We are going to help you break out of that pattern so you can actually get to what you want in life through a bit of self-challenge, a bit of self-curiosity, and a bit of action. Thanks, and stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron. I'm the founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so that you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your life, in your business, and of course, in your leadership impact. Today, we're going to be taking an insider look at how you might be a leader by title, but despite what it looks like on the outside, have you become a disengaged employee of your own life? Someone who's just going through the motions? Stay tuned, you'll find out. Remember, you can chat about this episode or any of our past episodes inside of our Facebook community page. Now on Facebook, just look for Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty podcast. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. Remember, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you tune into podcasts. And we also always need your help in staying relevant. So please get yourself over to iTunes, rate, review, and subscribe to the show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday, all the way from Lancaster, Philadelphia to Tampa, Florida. We're out there and ready to share. Also look for us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. With a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show, we're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. You can also catch us on Google Home and Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everyone you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you are a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, or a leader in any capacity, you know that there is always going to be another goal, always another target to hit. But secretly, many leaders, many A-type driven individuals find themselves asking, is this it? Is this really living? Well, according to our guest today, each of us can let go of goals that are not our own and find our own true motivation by simply learning how to do today. My guest today has an impressive and inspiring story. He went from being obese and depressed to being someone who runs marathons. He faced nearly losing his wife to illness while their young son watched. He became a vegan in a day. That's impressive for me. He got a master's from the top school and rose to a senior executive position in a successful business. And now he's a best-selling author, has spoken at TEDx events, written articles for major publications like Inc. magazine, the Chicago Tribune, LA Times. He's transformed his life and developed an approach to helping others, and it's delivered in one of his books. His new book is called Do a Day. He's here today with us to share that particular philosophy. So please help me welcome the author of Do a Day, ladies and gentlemen, Bryan Falchuk.
Hey, Dov, thanks for having me on.
Good to have you, mate. Thank you for joining us.
I love the studio audience. They go wild. That's awesome.
Yes, we have to hose them down afterwards.
That's right.
Just to get them to calm down.
Yeah.
Now, I just said a lot of things about you in the intro, sort of bullet points as it tends to be.
Yeah.
Of course, that's never the complete story. And I mentioned that who you are physically is very different, but you're very different mentally, emotionally. It's quite different from who you are. And I'd like to actually start by talking about who you were and the turning point in your life, because I think that's a good place for people to get a grasp of what this is all about.
Yeah. And I think, when you talk about being different physically, that's as much an outcome of the emotional, personal, internal as anything else.
Absolutely.
And that's the way it started. So I grew up like a lot of people in a house that was coming apart in divorce. And I was really young. I was about 5 years old. And, kids have this one basic need, and that's to feel safe and secure, like everything's going to be okay. And I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And, being so young, you don't really understand what you're feeling. So I needed to turn somewhere to just fill this void I had. And I turned to food because it was always there, never said no, always felt good, wasn't fighting, wasn't moving out, none of the things that I was witnessing in my house. And the problem is food is not a clinically approved treatment for anxiety. And so
it isn't?
No. It's
really? Okay.
In a minute. It's a good short term,
Exactly.
But the problem I had is I was eating not because of actual physical hunger. I was eating because of emotional hunger and this sense that everything was falling apart, which is a form of anxiety. And so as soon as I was done eating, well, all the reasons why I felt those holes were still there. And so I was just hungry again. And so within the period of about a year, I went from being the skinny, happy little kid to being visibly, like you look at a picture, I was visibly upset all the time, just unhappy and obese. Really quickly, I became obese. And it got to a point where I was about 100 pounds overweight through most of my childhood. I was doing the math. We're recording this end of 2018. About this time in I don't even know what year it was when I was in 5th grade, maybe 1989 or something. At this point in the year is what I weighed today. So from 5th grade to age 40, I weigh the same. And it's not that I've stayed the same weight the whole time.
and there's a height difference.
There's a height difference. Yeah.
And the distribution difference.
Yeah. Now I had more hair, but that's not doing enough.
You had 80 pounds of hair. That's what it was. That's all it was.
It was hair. And the odd thing is I used to be a size 12 shoe and I'm a 10 now. So like, I don't recall having these like globules of fat in front of my toes, but anyway, that's probably more information than your guests want to hear. Sorry.
I think that's something really interesting to explore for people. Do you have fat feet?
Fat in the length though, like I'm the same. I don't know. Anyway,
it spreads out in length.
Yeah, it's like butter on toast.
Exactly.
So how do I recover from that? So what's really interesting is, I'm at my 5th grade weight, but I think even scarier is from 5th grade to 8th grade. So just 3 years, I put on 70 pounds in that 3 years. So It's not like, I got to this place and then I just kind of stayed stagnant. I'm in the 170s right now. I was 248 in 8th grade. And that's a number I'll never forget because that's the last number I saw on a scale until I was in my 30s, because I just could not bear to look at it. So I kept getting bigger because my pants continued to not fit every passing year. I probably got to around 270, 275. And that's why I say I was about 100 pounds overweight, just for the mere fact that I don't actually know what I weighed. I just know that, I knew I was roughly around that weight, just given.
What age is this?
This is, I think 17 was when I got to my worst. Like you look at a picture of me from the semi-formal that spring and, from head to toe, it's like you could take your arm and draw it in front of you, like a half circle. It was like the Alfred Hitchcock profile, it's just kind of rotund is the only way to describe it. And I started to lose weight between my junior and senior year and into my senior year from getting a different introduction to exercise from this great guy who ran the PE program at my school, amazing man who I owe so much to. He just took a different approach to it. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't judgment. It wasn't, hey, fat kid, why are you so lazy? You need to get running or you're always going to be. It was none of that. It was, what do you enjoy doing? And that was the first taste I got with the notion that you're not going to keep doing that which you don't like. So why not find something you enjoy if you want to sustain it? If you want to change your life in perpetuity, you have to find things you actually care about and enjoy. And that theme goes on, like you're saying, that employee of your life, whether it's work or relationships or whatever, you're not going to keep doing that which you don't enjoy.
Yeah, and I want to take a pause there because I think that's a profoundly important piece for everybody to get.
Yeah.
Because one of the things I've talked about for years is what I call the bullshit notion of discipline.
Yes.
The bullshit notion of the bullshit notion of discipline is if I had enough discipline, I would be whatever the outcome is, successful, fit, whatever it might be, happy. But the truth of the matter is, it's not about the discipline. Discipline is merely willpower, and willpower will always run out of fuel. Yeah. But if you can find a way to get to that same destination, as you're just saying, through joy, then you'll do it forever.
Yeah. And then
it's happily do it forever.
Yeah. Yeah. Exercise, people are like, all you talk about is weight loss. I talk about a lot of other things. It's just really tangible, and a lot of us deal with it. But the thing about weight loss is it's so much of a punishment. Exercise is about undoing what you ate. And there's a sense of regret and guilt. And it's the same thing, like, if you have emotional issues, if you look at therapy as a punishment or an undoing, again, that's not, who likes punishment?
Right.
Sadomasochist, like that's about it, so
right.
You have to look at things in a different way. And I don't want to skip ahead to becoming vegan, but one of the things I keep saying to people is the reason why I continue to eat a vegan diet is, it's really not for any reason other than this is the first time in my life where I don't think about my weight at all. I exercise because I enjoy it, which is a crazy thing. If I were to go back in time and tell myself that, I'd like laugh in my face. But I actually just enjoy it. It has no punishment, no undoing, no, if I don't work out today, I'm going to gain all this weight, or I'm going to become fat again, or I'm going to be unhealthy. I eat in a way and I exercise in a way that's just all self-sustaining and very positive. And that's a one piece of my life that is altered just through the mindset shifts and the decision-making changes.
So let's just pause there for a moment, because, as you said, we're talking about weight, but this is not about weight.
Yeah.
This is not about weight loss. At the same time, from a social psychology point of view, we live in a society that is a shame-based society.
Absolutely.
Right? We're constantly shaming people for not working hard enough, and we're going to get to that part too. We're shaming people for not being the ideal weights or height or whatever. I mean, we actually shame people for things they have no control over. Yeah. Hey, shorty, and we give. I didn't get a choice in how tall or how short I am. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Or we shame people for the size of their nose. Well, you were born with that. We shame people things they have no control over, but we're a shame-based society. And when the shame gets big enough, then people apply this bullshit discipline and willpower, to try and reduce the shame. But they live in fear of the shame coming back if they gain the weight back.
Yeah.
And so this drives all kinds of things that I'm trying to have people grasp. So this is why I wanted to have you on the show, because one of the things that really stands out for me is you were able to, and of course you said with that assistance of that teacher, but you were able to shift that mindset. And I'm always cautious about saying mindset because, again, it's like discipline. It can be a very short-lived thing. Oh, yeah. I'm positive. Now shit happened and I'm not so positive again.
Yeah.
So help us to grasp, Bryan, help us to grasp this idea that I can be doing something, a person can be doing something that previously would have been associated to shame.
Yeah.
And move it to a different place, whether that's making $1 million, whether that's having a better life in some way, fitness, health, etc.
Yeah, it's a different perspective on it. Well, and Dov, here's the thing is I lost the weight. I had all the tools to lose the weight. And like most people who lose weight, I put the weight back on.
Of course.
I put half of it back on. And I'm sure I would have gotten well into the 300s if the choice to keep doing it wasn't taken away from me. And that is, I'm not going to shame myself for it, but while I had the tools to lose the weight, I didn't do the self-work so that the weight would just come off. So, right. and that's not a knock on this guy from high school. Like that wasn't his job. And I wasn't mature enough internally to recognize like, all the things I'm talking about, the feelings when I was a little kid, I wasn't aware of any of that.
Right.
I wanted girls to like me. And so I got to lose some weight. Like that was my motivation at the time. And it was about discipline, and that's great, but it doesn't last.
No.
And then especially once I got married, it's like, well, I got a girl to like me, and now what's she gonna do? Like, she's stuck. We got a kid, so I'm done. But
Exactly.
yeah.
Hey, congratulations!
Yeah,
You
it's
married somebody who's
too
going to
late
be
now.
very heavy.
Yeah, luckily she's not hearing me say any of this right now. But here's the thing: is 2011 rolls around. I was in my life, because of this anxiety, I was what I would call a fixer. I was constantly worried about what was about to go wrong. And I mean, that's like from that early age, that's exactly what it was about, is what's about to go wrong. And then if I wasn't doing that, I was also judging myself for all the things that went wrong before and how I failed and how terrible I was, whether it's like being fat or whatever it was. So I was constantly stuck between this judgment and this pain for all of my mistakes, all of my shortcomings, all of my insecurities that I was living with, and this constant sense of, oh my God, what's about to happen? This is the worst thing I've ever faced. How am I ever going to get through it? And what I always failed to recognize was the fact that I'm still standing today. Doesn't that mean that it's not as bad as I thought it would be? And maybe I'm a little bit more capable than I keep giving myself credit for, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. If this is the end of the world, then the world would have ended. But I'm always wrong about that. So, at some point you get to wake up to the reality, and I couldn't do it. What made it worse was I was a management consultant. So literally my job, my financial reward was around my anxiety, because I went into companies and found their problems and spotted them before they blew up and fixed them. So it's like, hey, Bryan, you're super anxious. Here's more money. It's like, it just, I was getting that reinforcement through my career of looking for problems, thinking the worst, and trying to get ahead of the curve. So it made me really self-sufficient and really capable and really successful, but it also just reinforced this sense of everything being a problem. And worse yet, I'm the only one who can fix it, because my parents can't do it because they've got their own stuff going on, and look what just happened, or this company can't do it because they had to hire me, or my wife can't do it, or whoever. And that's a pretty miserable way to exist. And it's a miserable way to be with someone, for my wife's sake. Like, that's not a terribly enjoyable kind of person to be with.
Right.
And I would not face it. I had every excuse in the world for not facing it. It's like, you need to talk to someone about the divorce and how that, no, I don't have time for that. And there's all this stuff going on, and how we're going to afford it. And the problem seer in me just saw the problems in, how am I going to go to an appointment every week for the next 2 years? Like, you don't understand my job. I can't do that. And eventually I didn't have the decision to make anymore, because in the summer of 2011, my wife has a chronic illness that we didn't know about, and it reared its head that summer. Our son was 2. She started wasting away in excruciating pain. No one could help her. No one could solve it. And they're all just blaming her. Like, oh, you seem really anxious. You sure you're not just like depressed or something? It's like, well, how would you feel if you were suddenly barely 100 pounds and bedridden, and your 2-year-old, is watching all this unfold? You'd be pretty upset too.
Yeah.
So I got a call from her primary care doctor, who was going on vacation, and he was just like, yeah, there's nothing else to do. I'll be back in 6 weeks. I'll check in with you then. And I said, do the math. She's losing 2 pounds a day. She weighs just over 100 pounds, and she can't get out of bed. She won't be here in 6 weeks. And he just goes, oh, okay, well, I'll take her to the ER. And he hung up. And I get off that.
Thank you for your compassion.
Yeah. Hippocratic oath and all that.
It's called the
Hypocritic oath.
Hypocritic oath, I think, in his case. Yeah.
He took the wrong one. So I get off that call and I go back into our bedroom, and my son is in there, and he's looking at his mom in bed, and he turns and looks at me, and when his eyes met mine, like, that was it. I was done. That he wasn't trying to do this, but the piercing power of our relationship and my sense of who am I in this family, and how am I behaving and performing and supporting or not doing those things, just hit me full on. That was a wake-up call that I really needed. And I looked at my wife, and I realized how I was failing her, because I was being the fixer. Anytime she just needed to sound off about how she was feeling and how scared she was, the fixer me can't have that, because that's all validating the bad outcome. So I'm just like, no, you need to do this. I was like, stop talking like that. That's not helping. You need to do this instead. And when you're scared for your life, that doesn't really help. I don't know if you've seen the movie Airplane. This just hit me the other day. There's a scene where there's like a woman who's hysterical, and people are lined up through the alley. The aisle. Yeah, to slap her. And it's like, that actually doesn't help when someone's hysterical. Like, slapping them in the face, not the best idea. And that's not literally, but that's figuratively what I was doing when she just needed me to put my arm around her and be there. And for my son, it was the same kind of thing. Is he needed to know, just like I did when I was his age or a little bit older, I need to know that everything would be okay. And God, like, divorce is one thing. Watching your mother die in front of your eyes is a whole other ballgame. And if that little kid can have any shot at happiness, it's not going to be with losing his mother and then me being the only thing he's got for a parent. This, anxiety ridden, no, get out of the way. I have to do this. I have to do that. I can't play with you right now. And I was failing him miserably. But thirdly, and probably most importantly, ultimately, I was failing myself. Like I said, if I'm still standing, why do I think all this anxiety is serving me? Like, maybe I'm a lot more capable, and hopefully I've figured something out by now about how to survive through these things so I don't have to freak out so badly all the time. I've got quite a bit of skill in this regard. Like, why do I need to treat it like this is the end and I've got no options?
Right.
And I'm miserable. I'd put on at that point about 50 of the 100 pounds. I had all this body pain. I'd had back surgery, and I just, the weight was contributing to how I felt. It's just all of it. I was in a job that had been great and was less great. It was turning really political in the company. The founder had passed away. And so it was, a change of leadership, and just the culture was different and didn't fit with me. And I was just a crap husband, and a crap dad. And I knew it as like, this anxiety is just eating my life, and I can't allow that. So that's when those signs behind me, this do-a-day idea, really struck me as this feeling is markedly different from anything I felt before. And I can't let this thing go, because I feel myself pushed in a way, driven in a way, attracted in a way to better, not change. Yes, I need to change, but that's not what I wanted. I didn't want to change. I wanted to just be. It's no more this like constantly trying not to be fat anymore. I just want to be healthy.
But I want to be cautious here, because I think that again is this. Well, just think positive. I mean, I can hear somebody on the other end of this going, this is bullshit. I'm supposed to just think positive and
it's not that
going to
simple.
be better. No, I know it's not, and that's why I want to sort of put a little break on it for a moment, because this is not even. It's more than a mind shift. It's more that. Like, this is much different than positive thinking or saying, as I said, discipline about saying, well, I'm not going to be fat anymore. This is not what it is. And again, I want to say to our listeners and our viewers that weight, which is what we started talking about, is simply a metaphor for everything we're talking about in leadership, in being fully present in your life, and being an outstanding leader, and being an outstanding human being.
Yes.
Because that's more important.
Yeah.
So let's just sort of come into that depth for a moment about it not being a mind, not just simply being a mind shift of positive thinking.
Yeah. It's so the mind shift is kind of the opening piece of the puzzle. And then it's all action. Do a day itself is it's an action-based execution strategy.
Right.
It's how you actually live your life. It just needs to come from the right footing. So there's two things that are mindset related that are the beginning building blocks. And the first is self-love. And if that gets people to feeling like too touchy-feely, call it self-worth or self-value, like whatever tougher sounding words you want to use. But the point is, to your point earlier, the shame, the person who we shame the most is ourselves.
Absolutely.
And everyone has some aspect of this going on. So,
and what's more is, particularly for A types, we think that it's positive motivation.
Yeah, it's the right thing to do.
We tell ourselves, "You lazy shit, get going." You're being lazy. You're not being good enough. Yeah. You're letting everybody down. We shame ourselves as a motivation factor.
Yeah.
As opposed to a completely different approach, which is what you're condoning. And I want to keep going on this, because I want people to get this is not positive thinking.
No,
this is not just a nice discipline. So people say I'm not getting that because I'm not disciplined. It's got nothing to do with discipline.
Nope.
People say I'm too negative. It's not about negative. It's about something vastly different.
Yeah. I was just thinking with the type A's, I can do better. You can do better even if you do well to begin with. Like, it doesn't mean just because you can do better that you did shit from the start.
That's the point, right?
Yeah.
That's the key is that where are you measuring?
Yeah.
Because your ego mind always wants to say it was crap.
Yeah.
And what you have to actually say is, one of the things I ask people to do is as an exercise, and I know that you'll like this, is I say to people, I want you to think about something you do every day that's easy. Anything. It's a skill. You've got it down, right? And it's kind of easy for you. You don't really have to think about it. And other people might look at it and go, wow, how'd you do that? And for you, don't even think about it. Now think about a time when that seemed impossible.
Yeah.
Right? And so, but every day, now you go, it's just matter of fact, and you dismiss it and you devalue it.
Yeah.
So everybody started out crap at everything.
Yeah.
Right? And to where you've got to. And it's a really great point that you get to is not looking back at and saying I was terrible. It's about looking at the incremental growth.
Yeah.
And that's is a very big thing for you. So I'm going to let you continue because this is important.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that.
The self-love piece, because again, I think that leaders are like, this is a bit woo-woo.
And you can't admit it in business. And look, if you're willing to get past that, actually, those are the best leaders.
Yes.
Like, one of them that I love turning to is a guy named Alan Mulally, who had been the CEO of Ford. He was there for their turnaround post, 2008, or he came in before 2008 when everything was falling apart. He's an amazing leader. He's an amazing human being, and he takes everything from a human standpoint. So, that's proof that at arguably, one of the top 10 leaders alive today, business leaders, you don't have to just be a ruthless scumbag who hates everyone, including yourself.
Exactly.
So it's okay not to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
So you start from this place of self-love, and self-love is about really two things. It's about believing that you deserve the better position that you're trying to get to, and believing that you're capable of achieving it. If you don't think those two things, nothing else we talk about really matters at all, because you're always going to work against yourself some way, shape, or form. You won't think you actually deserve it, or you could get there if you tried.
So help our viewer, our listener, even grasp that part. Person says, okay, well, I there's a part of me believes I deserve it. I've worked hard. I've done whatever it takes, but I'm not getting there. So maybe I don't feel like I deserve it. How would you help somebody to make that shift?
Yeah.
Because it can be elusive for most people, because most people have never looked at an unconscious level.
Yeah. So I just had this conversation with someone early in their career who's very frustrated by non-progress towards her ultimate, she's like, I want to change the educational system in my ancestral home country. And that's a hell of a goal. And she's like 22, and I'm all for that. But there are so many steps and so many things to do. And so she's feeling overwhelmed by it. And she's basically like, I think I just need to give up. I'm like, you just got out of college. Like you're done. And that's not a helpful perspective, because it's like, you're just blowing me off as being young. But in fact, what it is let's look at why you're not there yet. And let's look at what the journey looks like. There's a really great analogy that a mentor of mine gave me around dominoes. If that thing you're trying to achieve ultimately is the last domino in the row, work backwards and line up each and every domino. And each one is a very specific, tangible action or outcome that you need to achieve. And when you knock each one down all the way back to today that you've mapped it out, you're going to get there. But you're not at the last domino yet, and that's okay. So ask yourself, is it about impatience? Ask yourself, is it not about whether you deserve it or not, but maybe the way you've been going about it isn't right? And you can also ask yourself, is that still a goal that fits? Because guess what? We change. Our lives change. Our desires change. Maybe 10 years from now, she wakes up to something else, or maybe the world has changed. And so the issues that she was trying to solve in the world are less pressing than this other thing that has presented itself.
That's a great point. And I think because we need to stop for a minute, one of the things I was talking to one of my clients about the other day, which is, what are your priorities?
Yeah.
And are they the same priorities they were 5 or 10 years ago?
Yeah.
And there might be some things that are, but there's a lot of things that won't be. And if you're holding on to priorities that are outdated for who you are in your own evolution, then you end up pursuing shit that doesn't make you very happy. You end up pursuing stuff that makes you feel kind of empty. And then you say, well, what's wrong with me? You got to get, reassigns that same nonsense. What's wrong with me? I've been working towards this for 5 years, 10 years, whatever it is. and I'm not happy. Nothing. You just pursued the wrong goal.
Yeah.
It was the right goal the day you set it. It's the wrong goal today. And I know that you're really tied into real goals, like finding out what are the real goals for that individual. Help us to get into that a little bit.
Yeah. So the goal setting, the way I talk about it is it's a life-changing goal.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying not to come up with a weight loss example. Let's talk. Let's talk business. All right. I was in a business that I came in when they had gone from 4 million to 8 million in revenue on this team. And so the powers that be were like, okay, so next year you'll do 16 million because you doubled last year and you'll double this year. And like, maybe there's other stuff going on, and maybe doubling isn't, it gets harder as you get bigger. And by the way, it's 2008 and the world just kind of fell apart, and it's a financial services company. So maybe we could double. Maybe that's not the best idea right now. Like that may not be a good strategy profit wise, but for the team, it was super demotivating because it was they weren't looking at, we did 100%, we're doing 100%. They looked at it as, I have to come up with $8 million of new business. And that's assuming I hold on to every piece of business I already had, which never happened.
Exactly. No.
So all they could think about is, well, last year I did, 4 million in new business. And now like, I'm at this point in the year and I still haven't even done this much. And so it was just this constant focus on this overpowering goal that was blowing them away. And what's really important, and this is sort of giving away what Do a Day is about, is the execution strategy. They're not coming up with $8 million of business today. And that is a really important thing. And I didn't have to make, an appointment every week for 2 years to see someone to talk about my anxiety work right now. I don't have to make all that scheduling nonsense figure out. I just have to get one appointment in. They just have to close this deal. I just have to go to the gym and eat right today. It doesn't matter if I have 199 or 9 pounds to go, but that also means don't set a goal of 5 pounds or $500,000, or I'm going to make 3 appointments work. Okay, well, what is the point of that? Is 3 appointments the right number to get past your issue? Is 500,000 what actually gets your business to the place it needs to be? Those are steps along the way, but set the goal where the goal needs to be.
Okay.
And it has to be a stretch. It also has to be reasonable. That $8 million of growth was not reasonable. And, we were able to convince those same powers that be that, look, if we get there, our profitability is going to be significantly lower. So we made it 12 and we got to like 12.8. So we actually outdid the adjusted goal because the team felt the release of it, but they should have felt it from the start instead of focusing on the totality. And that's a big piece of execution is, if you remember, I was saying about the pain of yesterday and the fear of tomorrow. This is what we do all the time. With anything we're trying to achieve, with any way that we live, really, we go into it with this sense of, where did we screw up yesterday? Who screwed us over? Who hurt us yesterday? We bring all that into today. And that's like, you were in an argument with someone last week, you didn't resolve it. Next time you see them, you're probably going to be in an argument with them all over again because you're still living like, and he said that to me.
Carrying it.
And we do it with the future. And that's like, all these big goals is like, oh my God, $8 million and I only have 11 months to go. I better, how am I going to do this? And you freak out, you bust your hump at the gym and eating right. And it's like, you go weigh yourself and it says you have 101 pounds to lose because muscle weighs more than fat, and maybe, or you just had something to drink or whatever. But you look and you're like, oh my God, it's all over now. No, you're not doing everything in the future right now. And you don't know what's going to happen or not happen. And you don't know if today was hard, that tomorrow's version of it is also going to be hard. None of that's happening right now. So to live in your current moment with the pain of yesterday and all this judgment and anxiety and fear and anticipation of tomorrow, all you're doing is throwing away right now. And you're not going to make the right kind of decisions when you're making from that place of insecurity. You're going to live like I did, constantly worried and maybe being accusatory of people because you presume the worst in everything. And you end up not executing on those big goals. You end up not delivering on the life you're trying to live, whereas you could. And that's Do a Day it's the 2 key words, the word in the middle, doesn't matter too much, but do, it's a verb. And that's why it's not just mindset. It's about doing. Like, wake up today. What actions are you going to take in pursuit of your biggest goals for today? And it doesn't matter whether you did them yesterday. It doesn't matter how many times you may or may not have to do them or how hard or easy it's going to be tomorrow, because none of that's happening. In this day, do what you have to do in pursuit of those goals. And what you find is the sum total of all that, it's successive wins. It adds up. It gets you to your goal. It's reinforcing. It's self-empowering. It's just, that's been the unlock for me. It's not that I just wake up and I'm like, oh, everything's perfect. You know what? It's not perfect.
No.
I have a chronically ill wife who, I should say, she's still alive, but she lives with this every day. My son is actually really sick right now. Like, life happens. I still have anxiety.
Sure.
It just doesn't have me.
Yes.
You know, I am in a different place where I recognize, I'm like, okay, I'm actually spiraling right now. What can I do about that?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I need to let it play out and then bring it back in. And sometimes I can stop it in its tracks, but I'm aware of it instead of living my life dragged around by it. And that's totally different. So it's not just mindset. It's about being conscious, being proactive and mindful today, and making specific decisions and taking those actions and seeing them through. And that's how, you know, you mentioned the marathon, like about 14 months before I signed up to do it, a friend suggested, I'm like, I could never do a marathon. And it wasn't that far off. So there are things that I've achieved that weren't even so absurd for me to be like, I'd never do that. Like, they weren't even on the list for me to blow off. And yet I'm there anyway. And that's just a testament for anybody. And, you know, people who have read the book and reached out to me, I'm hearing about whether it's business or life or whatever's going on for them, they're finding the ability to blow themselves away a bit. And that's a pretty exciting thing.
So in many ways, and if I'm wrong, please correct me or redirect me. In many ways, once one has decided on the big goal, it's what can I do today? What am I willing to do today? What can I stretch myself to do today? Is that correct?
What will I do? Yeah. Because people get into, I can't do that. It's like, well, yeah, not with that attitude. But there is a missing unlock that we haven't touched on. And for me, it's the thing that was thrust in my face through my son's eyes.
Right.
And I was on a podcast from this Navy SEAL who was blown out of his vehicle in the desert. You know, a bomb went off and he's laying there for dead. That was his wake up moment. But most people don't have those. Most people don't have a gun pointed right between their eyes. And so a lot of what I get is, you know, Bryan, really inspiring story, but that's not going to work for me. I haven't had that. I'm just kind of this automaton going through the motions, and I've realized I'm miserable, but I don't have a reason to change. And willpower doesn't work. You know, determination, like, that's great for 5 minutes and then it fades. The missing link is motivation. And this is the thing that I decided, look, I feel different. It's about what motivates me. I need to figure out why this is different so I can share this out. And this is probably, self-love is, to me, is the most important building block, because without it, the rest doesn't matter. But once you have that, if you don't have your true motivation, then you're never going to go anywhere. And I don't like to talk that way, but this one I feel pretty adamant about.
Right. So I want to dive into this a little bit, because I think it's an interesting point, because I'm actually anti-motivation, but I don't think we're talking about the same thing.
Probably not. Yeah.
Right. And I know that from our previous conversations. You know, motivation becomes another version of positive thinking, rah, you know, and let's get you motivated. Yeah. And that's not what we're talking about at all with true motivation.
No cheerleaders here.
No, exactly.
Not what this is about.
And, you know, and we may have different words for it, but, you know, in this sense of true motivation, it is this stuff that will get you up. When, you know, my language is, when you've been hit to the canvas, you will get up because of a true motivation. And you and I talked, and I'm gonna come back to you on it in a moment. But you know, you and I talked about that. There are events in our lives. You know, mine was literally falling off a mountain.
Yeah.
Yours was watching your wife fade away, and then seeing your son watching his mother, you know, potentially exit his life. These massive moments, as you and I talked about before, are these moments where everybody else thinks, oh, that was the moment your life turned around. It's not.
No.
That is a pivotal moment for sure, but it's not a choice moment. And I always say the choice moment is where the real change takes place, because that's the moment when you can just slide back into the usual.
Yes. Yeah.
And you make another choice and go, you know what? This is not going to be good enough for me. I want something better. There's something more, quote, meaningful.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, in our previous conversation, that is where you tied into real motivation or true motivation for that human being. Talk to us a little more on that.
Yeah, well, so that phone call, that moment with my son's eyes, that was June 30th. That's not the day that I talk about. I was reborn, for lack of a better word, on July 1st because I woke up and I still felt it, and I said, "Hang on, this is a lifeline." Anytime I felt anything remotely like this, I've noticed it, I've nodded, and I've let it slip away, and I'm going to grab
Mm,
hold of this thing and
mm.
understand why it's different. And that was the choice moment. So what was so different about it for me? And this is the piece that allows other people to figure it out without any of what you and I have gone through, or other people have had these extreme wake up moments where they then make a choice. And there's people who have those extreme moments who don't make the choice, or they make
And
a
that's the
different.
point. They have pivotal
Yeah.
moment after pivotal moment after pivotal moment,
Yeah.
and then make a choice. By the way, I fell off a mountain 120 feet. That was my fourth fall, not my first, my fourth. And in between that, I'd had devastating relationships and gone, bordered on bankruptcy, all versions of falls.
Yeah.
But it took me, I had to land, as I always say, I fell 120 feet from a self-imposed pedestal and landed on my ego. It took my ego to get cracked open
Yeah.
in order for that to actually become not just pivotal, but a choice. So you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. People
Yeah.
go through this nonsense over and over.
It's what you're figuring out in that true motivation. And again, I don't care about the words. We can call it whatever we want. That's the point is the content, not the semantics of it. There's three, and I say four, but the fourth one is redundant, but it serves a purpose. There's three key things that I discovered were really different about it. When I lost weight the first time, I didn't want to be the fat kid anymore. And then I went to college. Nobody knew me. I didn't go there fat. I went there thin. And so my motivation, was gone.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, whether it's for beach season or your wedding, or, I was talking to someone the other day who's miserable in their job and kind of phoning it in. They're like, but bonus season's coming up. So I'm amping it up now because I want him to be like, oh yeah, he's producing. Like, let's give him a good bonus. And then bonus season comes and goes. And then what? So it's like, those aren't motivations. I mean, technically, yes, they are, but
Yeah,
that's
the temporary motivations.
Yeah, you were harking back to those a minute ago. These are the temporary things that, what's missing from them? Well, they're not profound. They're not deep within you. These are external things. Other people viewing me as the fat kid. Now, maybe that's actually me viewing me that way through their eyes, and it's like puppets. Sure. But regardless, that's not about how I see myself directly, and I'm not in touch with that. Something for beach season, it comes and goes. It's not enduring. It's not profound. It's not deep within you. It's not enduring. Those are the three key things that you've got to find. It's like you're saying, when you hit the mat and you don't want to get up, it's like people like, dig deep. It's the thing you're digging for.
Yes.
It's that deep internal core kind of thing that operates at the values level. It's not even about failing my son, which is what I felt in that moment. It's the reason why that bothers me.
Yes.
And this is where it's very much a peel the onion kind of thing, is you have to keep asking why. So I've got a bunch of questions in the book to help people probe. To kind of boil it all down, one is, what will you always care about no matter what? And what I guarantee everybody is your first answer is wrong. And it's not that it's a terrible answer. It's just, it's up here.
Surface.
You got to get way deeper. And to be fair, the piece I said about discovering my feelings and my value of my own life, that didn't come until 2017. So 6 years later, I'd already written the book.
Right.
I was being interviewed for, I think, like my 40th time about the book. So I've been talking about it. I had my TED talk ready to go. And this guy called me out. He's like, you're talking about your motivations, your son. And I get, you're like, oh, your feelings of your child are within you. And he's like, but it's not. As much as it feels that way, it's not. You've got another layer to peel back. It's like, you know what? You're right. So it's an ongoing journey, and that's okay. And some people don't like that. They don't like the duration. They don't like the work. What I would suggest is the work and the duration are probably the best part of it, because that's discovering yourself. And when you realize how little you know about yourself and how much you could know, that gets really exciting. That's the real unlock for your potential.
But we have to stop there for a moment and ask this question, because you and I both know, because of the work we do, the idea of you need to know yourself is a direct slap in somebody's ego, because I know myself. I mean, we've all, you and I have seen that response. Well, I know myself.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? Well, I know I'm an asshole, but at least I'm honest about it. So I guess I have emotional intelligence. No, you're an asshole who needs to work on themselves. That's different. What I'm talking about here, because that again is a shame place.
Yeah.
If you need to know yourself becomes a way to self-shame. I don't know myself.
Yeah.
How many times? I know you've had this, Bryan, because I know I've had it a million times. And I really don't think I'm exaggerating when I say a million. Where I've said something and that person either out loud to me, to someone else, or to themselves has said, I should have known that.
Yeah.
That's a shaming comment.
Yeah.
Why should you have known it? And I always say to my clients who are born in America and have only lived in the US or Canada or somewhere, who've never met anybody who spoke Mandarin and have certainly never been to China, and I go, are you upset with yourself you don't speak Mandarin? And they go, no. And I go, how come? You should be. And they go, why? Well, according to you, you should know what you don't know. And if you've never been to China and you've never met Mandarin people and you've never bothered to learn the language, why the hell wouldn't you know it? And there's so much about ourselves we don't know because nobody's given us a mirror. Nobody's given us a way to look at those things. And so, again, we're back at this place of shame motivation. And the truth is that we don't like that. So this is why people say, oh, therapy, coaching, self-examination, those are punishments that say how dumb I am or how stupid I am for not having known this stuff.
Yeah.
How do you confront that when you're in front of a client who is, you're talking, oh, it's a wonderful journey, and they're like, stick it up your ass, and blow smoke because this is not fun. This is not easy. I should have known this. I'm a smart guy. I went to medical school or whatever it is.
So I don't sugarcoat it. And I learned that validation is the fastest path to getting people to accept things. So when they give me all that, I'm like, yeah, this is really hard. And I don't think you should have known it. I don't know that you could have known it. But the best part about it is there's a lot you don't know. And you're going to keep finding out things and keep growing. And it's hard. And when you recognize that you have all this potential to grow more and see more, you get over feeling the loss of not knowing something and see like, this is a complete unlock that I didn't get before. So I just kind of recognize, yeah, it is really tough. And you know what? You're probably gonna have a lot more moments where you're like, what's wrong with me? How could I not have known this? Or like, yeah, thanks for pointing out what an ass I am, or how like that's kind of the journey. And again, like that's okay. So kind of let them feel like their feelings are okay. This ain't the last time it's going to happen. And, I mean, that's those first talks with potential clients. A lot of what I say is like, I've had people cry. I've had people get really, really upset, not with me, but with the whole conversation, what they're realizing, all that's okay. And I also will tell you right now, like part of a coach's job is I'm going to call bullshit when bullshit is afoot, because that's what you're paying me to do. And sometimes that gets uncomfortable, but that's kind of the point, and that's all right. So just like, let's level set. Yeah, there's going to be plenty of moments when you're like, this sucks, or like, what's wrong with me, or what's wrong with you? That's all normal and fine. I got thick skin. I don't really, well, that's not true. I don't have thick skin, but in those contexts, I do.
In that context, yeah.
Yeah, and it's there's nothing wrong with it. I feel like as a society, we think there's something wrong with it. I mean, how many people, if you get in a coaching relationship in a corporate setting, the presumption from the coachee is someone's looking to fire them. And so that coaching is either to fix their horrible, horrible brokenness, or it's just to give HR the written proof, the coach's assessment, like a second opinion from a doctor, so that they can you. Maybe it's because you've got potential and maybe you're not recognizing or realizing it yet. Maybe they're trying to help you find that. And they're like, person's great, but maybe a bit disengaged. How can we turn that around? Because we see the opportunity in them. And maybe your disengagement is why you're perceiving it to be negative. Like, oh, they must hate me because like I can't even figure it out. It's like, well, maybe they're trying to help you figure it out. Or yeah, maybe they are trying to fire you. And maybe we can screw them and use this for your growth. And either you stay there and you end up kicking ass and they want to keep you around and suddenly you're a rock star. Or on their dime, you just got built up into this amazing performer who knows himself and has all of this opportunity and ability to seize on it, who just goes to a competitor somewhere else and you're rearing to go. So either way, like it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but the presumption's always like, oh, great. I got to call my wife and let her know, like they're getting ready to fire me. They just got me a coach. No, coaching.
Yeah, and again, it's that shame basing, that's so everywhere in our society. And my caution around it, as our viewers and listeners are watching and listening, is yes, it's there.
Yeah.
Yes, it's probably running in your head because you were societally conditioned with that. but you have to choose not to feed the beast.
Yeah.
And that oftentimes, and this is not positive thinking either. But I will tell you this, and I'm sure you will agree with me, Bryan, that the shittiest thing that happens to you is the shittiest thing that happens to you until it's not.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is I could not have paid to learn the lessons I needed to learn by falling on my coconut.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Yeah.
And if I could have, I wouldn't have paid it anyway. But the truth of the matter is that if somebody had come out to me at the time and said, this is the best thing that could have happened to you, I would have dropped them. There's no doubt about it. I would have dropped them in a moment because it's an ignorant and unempathetic thing to say.
Yeah.
But the truth is there will come a point when you will say that. And I came to that point, and you've come to that point.
Yep.
And it's easy for us to, when people look and go, oh, I can't believe that you were able to come back. Well, for me, there was never a choice.
Yeah.
The choice was there. That's true. I did think about suicide. I will fully own that. I did, but I knew I had to do something else. And then it becomes like, okay, well, I just got to get up.
Mm-hmm.
But why am I going to get up? And you and I have the process that we both learned from one of the great revolutionaries of the Japanese Industrial Revolution, that we both use, which is the 5 whys.
Yes.
And you talk a lot about values. So before we sort of move towards the end of the show, I want to get into this and helping people to sort of, in this self-love, self-knowledge piece and finding real motivation, setting real goals, true goals that are real for a person. We can't do that without knowing what we stand for, in my words, what hill you're willing to die on. Yeah. Walk us through your version of the 5 why process in finding values.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole idea of the 5 whys is you keep asking why until you get down to that bottom level, you can't find another answer for the thing that you've landed on. And with values, it's exactly the same thing. It's not just for finding out why the stamping machine is creating parts wrong, which is the Toyota example where it's birthed in operations. I'll give you an example from someone that I've been working with, and I think it's a really good one. He was 22 years old, NCAA athlete, blonde hair, chiseled good looks, about 35 years ago. And he got a job.
Proviso.
Yeah.
Years ago.
He got a job in a sales role. And 35 years later, he's in the C-suite, head of sales for the whole company nationally. Everybody knows him. His blonde hair is silver. His chiseled good looks are circular. His single, fun evenings, he's now married, empty nester. His kids are in their mid-20s and moved out. And he's diabetic. And he also gets pushed out of the company and has no clue who he is or what he cares about or any of that, because he hasn't looked at that in 35 years. And I promise you, not that he did it when he was 22, but whatever he would have come up with then had nothing to do with who he is or the world he's in today.
No.
And so he reached out to me. He's like, Bryan, you got to help me. I got to find a job. And I said, well, okay, happy to help you. Let's talk about it. Why do you feel you need to find a job right now? Because you have a 2-year severance package and your house is paid for and your wife works and your kids are self-sufficient and you're a couple years from retirement anyway, and you have a pension. Like, why I have to find a job right now? Why so desperate? And he's like, well, because I got to pay the bills. I said, well, okay, that was the first why. And now we got pay the bills. So why do you have to pay the bills? The bills are paid. Like you guys have the means to pay the bills. So what is it? Well, I'm the breadwinner, which is kind of another definition of I have to pay the bills, but it's different. And the difference is that's a role in your family. So we went from, I have to have this outcome to I have to do this logistical task. I have to cut a check to phone company X or whatever, to I have to continue to be seen in this role. We're starting to get into things that are more emotional and values and personal than just sending a check to the electric company or whoever. And I said, well, why do you see yourself as a breadwinner? Who's looking at you that way? And I said, well, that's, my kids have always looked at me that way. I'm like, yeah, but they're not there to see that. And they win their own bread today. So where's that come? And we get this back and forth, and it gets back to, he was always seen as a successful sales guy. Everyone knew and loved him, and he has no identity anymore. And what he was striving for is every answer was ultimately about something he could do that he could hang his hat on as what his role was, his responsibility. It was trying to find an identity. And so I made him promise me not to just rush off and get a job, because he had people calling him. It's like, we got to work on you first, because if you just rush to a job, you're going to end up out of there in a few months. And so he promised me, but he lied. So he did get a job. He was out in 7 months. But he did continue on with the self-work and the discovery. He is in a different job today. This is almost 3 years ago. Different job today. You know, he's been at for just about 2 years, and he is thriving there, and he's happy. And just talked to me. He's like, I'm loving this, because he actually knows what he cares about. He knows who he is and why he was doing it in the first place. Whereas that other job was about having money in the bank that a check is going to be drawn against. And first of all, I'm like, why are you writing checks? You know, like, the world has moved on. That's a whole different story.
That's a different subject.
Yeah. But that was about starting with something that's super surface level. Sounds like values have nothing to do with it. And actually values have everything to do with it, but you don't get there unless you keep digging. And that was really important.
And one of the things that in my work with leaders is, we talk a lot about succession, and whether that's in a family business where you're passing it down to the next level, or whether that's, for instance, trying to sell your book in the insurance world, that's succession. And what we know is that, we know that we are living longer than we lived before, and people used to retire at 60 and 65. People are not retiring at 60 and 65. We know that my generation, I'm the end of the young baby boomers, and that we know that my generation is likely to live to 100, and that your kids are likely to live to 120, right? So, 60 is not a time to retire. It's like, I've still got another 30, 40 years of life.
Yeah.
However, if one's life has been, hi, I'm Dov, I'm the CEO. Now what I've stated is my identity. Yes. And if I'm no longer the CEO, I'm going, hi, I'm Dov.
Yeah.
And we are so identified. We live in an identified world. Social media has made that more stronger, not weaker. And so, everybody who goes to a job wants a freaking title. I'm the VP of toilet paper. I mean, whatever. Everybody, and the problem is that we get identified with that we give the meaning of our life to that title, and that's not the meaning of our life. And so when that title goes away, we feel lost, because we've not done the values work. We've not done the self-discovery work. We've not found out what our primary drivers are. We haven't, one of the things you talked about is being this fixer. Well, that's a primary driver. That's not a value. That's a primary driver. A primary driver comes from an emotional wound. Here's this little kid trying to fix his mom and dad's marriage. He's 5. He can't do it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go fix everything in the freaking world to make up for the fact that I couldn't fix mom and dad's marriage. And then you go, oh, this ain't working.
Yeah.
In fact, it might push me out of the marriage. In fact, it might make me a shitty dad. In fact, it might make me a shitty leader. And we don't bother to go below the surface. And then we go, well, why am I a terrible leader? This is why you've not gone below the surface.
Yeah.
Following all the rules, I know. I did the training, I know. But who's doing that?
Right.
Well, I am. No, you're not. The autonomous, as you said, this robotic version of yourself, not with the depth. And that's why I loved what you were saying about taking people in that values journey is so very important. As we move towards the very end of the show here, I want to ask you a couple of things. First of all, as a leader, particularly as a conscious leader, and you obviously are, I think conscious leaders are all committed to their growth. As successful as you are, and as things have moved forward and changed, what are you still working on within yourself? What are you still committed to self-discovery on?
Yeah. So I have had to be very aware of the fact that I still deal with everything that I talk about. People are like, oh, so your life's fine now. Like, you've got it all licked. No, I don't. And for some people that manifests as imposter syndrome. So I can't talk about, my second TED talk was all about solving relationship dysfunction. Ironically, my wife and I had an argument right before I left for the airport to go do that. I haven't told anyone this yet.
That is beautiful. I love that. I really do.
But you know why? It's not because I'm an ass. It's because we're human.
Yes.
And as enlightened as I may get, or people may want to think I am on Instagram, I'm just a person. And it, like the last picture I posted on Instagram was not me with my shirt off in the sun. Like it was a picture of sauerkraut. What is that about? I'm just a person. I deal with stuff, and I will continue to deal with stuff. And writing a book doesn't make me immune to that. Coaching people doesn't make me immune to that. It just means I'm aware of it and I have the tools to do something different. So on the topic of shame, it's about staying present with this idea that like, that's okay. I can be an expert on these things or be someone that other people turn to and still need to turn to people myself. You know, I talk to people from a therapy standpoint for myself. I have mentors and coaches myself. And I think that's actually a good thing, but I try to stay honest with that and also not get too judgmental with myself, which there are times when it can be tough. Sure. And there are times where it's like, that's just because I'm human and that's okay. And maybe that means I'm doing field research. Like you can frame it another way because I'm just keeping fresh on the subject matter. Yeah, I'm a real person and I deal with it on a regular basis like anybody.
And I think that's really important. You know, every great leader I have met has at least one coach or a therapist or multiples of each.
Yeah.
Because they understand it's a journey of self-discovery, that leadership starts with self-knowledge. And if you don't have that, you're not willing to develop yourself, get out of it. Stop being a leader. You're not a leader, right? I don't know what you are. Maybe somebody's got the hand up your ass and you're a puppet, but you're
just a boss.
Exactly. And
or manager. There's a sad. Big difference. Yeah.
And the other side of that, the flip of that is that, as you just well pointed out, that people, if you let them, people will look at you as being there. And what you and I know is there is no there. I've got this, I've talked about this on many of my interviews because, as you know, because I'm going to be on your podcast. But, I talk about how people perceive me and how I perceived myself before I fell. And I've got this, actually, you'll see the image on Instagram. I'll share it with you on Instagram. And it's me holding a placard and it says, I used to be enlightened, but I'm all right now.
Yeah.
Because, until I fell, I thought I was pretty enlightened. Now, I'm all right now because I realized that's complete horseshit. It's not real. It's not real.
Yeah.
What's a guilty pleasure for Bryan?
Oh, God, that's okay. If I could define a perfect day, it would just be to lay in bed and watch a show or many, many shows. As like, I love exercise. I'm a doer and all that, but if I could just stay in bed, even like till 7 a.m., you have no idea how awesome that would be. That is,
so a guilty pleasure would be to stay in bed till 7 a.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, you're a wild man.
Yeah, I know. This is why I don't have friends. I'm a little bit too bad influence. That would be awesome. Yeah. I want to break sometimes and it's not in my nature. That was the biggest thing I learned from the marathon training was the rest day. Like I knew when I looked at it, it wasn't the long runs. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do on Wednesday? I'm going to tear my hair out because I'm not going to be able to do anything. And it was such good training, but yeah, I got a lot on my plate. And so it is hard to stay in bed because there's stuff that's got to get done. But if I could just one day just find a day to do nothing and have no one call me or ask something to me, that would be awesome.
That's very cool. Don't
tell anyone cool. I said that. This isn't going out anywhere, right?
I promise I'll keep that to myself.
Right.
In a world where people are often terrified to offend everybody else, I'm going to ask you, what is your bravest opinion?
Oh.
So is that opinion that this is brave for me to say, but I got to say it.
So this is tied to my wife's health situation. And the reason why it's a brave one for me to have is I'm the child of a doctor in the Boston area, which is like this medical mecca. And he's an amazing physician, but the medical community here needs to learn something about humility and remember that they're scientists and observation actually does matter. And so my wife has chronic Lyme disease, which for whatever reason is not well accepted or accepted in the medical community. They were content to let her die rather than admit that it was real, even though she tests positive and has all the symptoms. Here's the thing. Doctors are incredible, but let's not forget, in the history of man, it wasn't so long ago that a doctor was also a barber and used leeches for everything. There's this great Saturday Night Live skit where people are coming into the barber for medical treatment, and it's always, oh, better, do bloodletting, get the leeches. And then people get in a carriage accident and they're all bleeding to death. And the barber's like, get the leeches. It's like, oh, okay, that wasn't so long ago. And while that was a funny skit, that kind of was reality. And the earth was flat and the sun revolved around us. And you know what? We live and we learn, and we realize we don't know everything. But the attitude that we have, and it was the same at every point in those periods in time too. Anyone who said otherwise was a heretic.
Yeah.
People are hurt and dying and suffering because of that mentality. So my maybe brave viewpoint is, can you learn a bit of humility? Can you stop assuming you know everything? Open your mind a little bit, and don't tell people they're crazy when their experience is different, because maybe you just haven't been open to it, and the community that you're a part of refuses to acknowledge it. And that's not just for physicians, that applies universally. It's not in many other settings where lives are at stake.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's
about being human. We all need it.
That's not opinion, but it's a great piece of guidance for any of us. As you said, it's profoundly important and with dire impact in the medical system, but generally we all need a lot more of that to say, I've always said the three most dangerous words you'll ever speak are, I know that.
Yeah. Hey, look at the number of companies that were at the top of their game that don't exist anymore.
Exactly. Right.
Motorola, Nokia did it to Motorola, and then happened to them too. So no one's immune from it.
No. So it's really important to grasp this whole idea that to stay curious. I mean, I sign off every show with saying stay curious, because I think, I think the worst words you could ever use are, I know that, because your brain shuts down. You stop listening. Well, I know these symptoms and it means it's this. Yeah, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. As we finish up now, what I want you to ask you one final question. We've covered some great stuff here. You and I have dug into areas of leadership, from the psychological and the emotional states that most people would not normally go to. And I hope they really listen and pay attention. But I'm going to ask you for one piece of practical advice that our listener, our viewer can go away, put in action today, right now, preferably within 5 minutes even, but certainly by the end of the day. What would you say? Go do this.
All right. So the theme that we kept hitting is the shame one. And I don't think either of us actually expected that to be but that just keeps coming up.
Right.
And so I find myself giving this advice quite often. It's because the whole world needs it. I call it stop the butt. And maybe people have heard me say this before, but this is all around self-love. We are part of the problem is we're not great at taking compliments. We self-deprecate. We get in these battles over who had a worse night last night, whose boss is meaner, who had more work. And like the winner's the most miserable one.
Yeah.
When someone pays you a compliment, as soon as the word but forms in your mind, stop it. Just say thank you, or say, I'm so glad you feel that way. Like, what they're telling you is what their experience was. So just be appreciative on their behalf. I'm so glad you liked it. You don't even have to say thanks if you can't. But instead of saying, oh, thanks, but I really screwed up presenting this piece of the presentation, it's, oh, you did a great job presenting the CEO. Oh, I messed up slide 3, but no, just say thanks, or say, I'm so glad you liked it, or I'm so glad you felt that way, and stop there. That's not necessarily the same as feeling good about yourself, but what it's doing is it stops eating away at you. And the more you do that, you start to break the pattern. So everyone can do this right now. Stop the but, keep it in your head. As soon as that word forms, when someone says or thinks something nice about you, just stop. Allow for the good about you to be out there.
Fantastic. That's great. Bryan, this has been a great show. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you and all the fabulous resources that you have.
Oh, thank you, Dov. So people can go to bryanfalchuk.com. It's BRYANFALCHUK.com/Dov. and they can, so I put a bunch of information there, including a little discount on Do a Day if you want to pick up the book. It's everywhere, but you can get to it through my website. It's at every bookseller and all that. But if you go to bryanfalchuk.com/dove, you can connect to me on social, you can get the book, see what I'm up to, check out the TED Talks, whatever you want.
Fabulous. Thank you. That's awesome. That's really cool. Well, again, it's been a real pleasure, a real honor having you here today. And thank you for all that you shared. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. And I want to say to you, dear listener, as always, please don't just listen to the show. Do something with it. Information's worth the hole in the donut. Transformation comes from application. Remember, you can chat about this show or any of our previous episodes on our Facebook community page. Just go search Dov Baron Leadership and Loyalty Podcast. Remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing even the most successful companies can be somewhat counterintuitive. And these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent, only to have them leave at an alarming rate. If you're sick of investing in training your talent, then before you get your ROI, come talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside of your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing you with the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. Remember to stop by the Matrix, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. You don't need triple W's, just matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, and get your Authentic Leadership Matrix self-assessment tool. It's valued at $197. It's absolutely free to you for being a listener to our show. Remember, you can find us on Google Home and Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron Podcast. Thank you for sharing the show with everyone you know. Until next time, stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about the next 4 whys below your basic answer. And start with the question, why do I need to shame myself about this? Go 4 levels deep. You might be blown away. I'm Dov Baron. I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.